AgeTech, what is it and its impact now and in the future? So this is number 3 in a series on aging in place webinars that we have started. And today's panelists, and I'll introduce all these gentlemen a little bit later. First is Richard Caro, who's the co-founder and CEO of Tech Enhanced Life. Steve Ewell is the executive director of the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. Alex Glazebrook is with AARP's Older Adult Technology Services and is Director of Operations. And we have we want to thank our sponsor for today's event, which is Pat Kelly of Routinify, and Pat will be speaking a little bit later. And now a bit more about AgeWise. We are working to become the premier resource hub for aging Coloradans and their families. So we're helping the over almost 3 million now Coloradans over the age of 40. So caregivers, care receivers, independents to age well and age wisely. We do a lot of our targeting toward folks who are in this sandwich generation. And the more people I talk to about that, the more I see that that's actually the right thing to do. A lot of people in that age space have to deal with a lot of things that they never had thought about very much before. And so this is an opportunity for them to learn and find resources that they need. So we serve aging Coloradans and those caregivers and adult children, employers. You think about the fact that if you have employees in that sandwich generation and they're getting stressed out, trying to deal with a family situation, don't know where to go. And we provide them with a soft landing spot where they can find information and service providers that will be helpful to them. So our population here in Colorado is, as you may have heard, the second fastest growing in the country, behind Alaska of all places. But you can see why, because this 60% and higher of 65 plus growth is, there's a lot of that dark spot here in the state of Colorado. And it's all due to a lot of people moving here many years ago, and here they still are. This one is another one that many people are familiar with and others are not. It shows the 65 plus population is growing at a faster rate than the 18 and under population. These are the services that we focus on providing to people when they come to our website. As you can see, it's quite a variety of different services. And we do vet all of our service providers. So today we're speaking about this one in the upper right-hand corner, which is in-home technologies. We have had webinars on various of these other topics previously, and we'll continue to have more in the future. So would you rather Google and cross your fingers, hope you find something you're looking for, or would you rather AgeWise and no? So it's a choice. And the more people that learn about what we're doing, the more people will come here and find what they're looking for. And we do definitely include many organizations who have their own lists of service providers, for example, the AAAs and others. Depth of knowledge about aging and what we're doing to make more of the what's often invisible visible. And the reason we know a lot about aging is because we have all these different service providers who know a lot. So we provide a network that really combined together, we have a really good knowledge. And plus we have a lot of connections in the aging space here in Colorado. Some of our webinars previously and coming up, I just wanted to give you a quick example. All of these previously held webinars are recorded and they're on our website if you're interested in watching them, including this one today. This is something that's put together by a young lady in Israel who calls herself the gerontechnologist. This is her right here. She puts this AgeTech market map together every year. And you can't possibly see all of these different organizations that are on this map, but it gives you a pretty good idea of the level of activity in what we call the AgeTech space. I mean, she does try to segregate them according to certain subject areas, but they're this is by no means a complete list. This is a list, but it just goes on and on. So that gives you some sense of what we're talking about here today. So what I'd like to do now is introduce Pat Kelly, who's with Routinify, and he is going to tell us a little bit about what Routinify does, and then I'm going to introduce each of our panelists. So go ahead, Pat.
Bob, thanks you very much for the opportunity. So my name is Pat Kelly. I'm the founder and CEO of a local Colorado-based software organization called Routinify. We're focused initially primarily on the aging adult market space. Being Colorado-based, though, the irony is that we're doing most of our business in Canada, and that's primarily a function of the payer differences in terms of how elder care is financed between the Canadian marketplace and the US marketplace, but that's rapidly changing. I come at this from the adult child caregiver perspective. So this is a condensed version of what Bob just showed, but when you're the adult child caregiver and you look at that, it's like, oh my God, what is all this stuff? It's all single purpose. I got to buy an app for this and an app for that and an app for this. And none of it talks to each other, and you have to configure them all separately. And none of them are really easily usable by the care recipient. They're all very push care at somebody focused. So that was kind of the problem space that I saw as an adult child caregiver. And the application that we developed, we call Well Assist. And it serves as a hub, not an exclusive hub, but it serves as a hub for a variety of activities going on in the home or a congregate care environment. That can range from aggregating all the necessary data from medical devices, blood pressure, glucometers, et cetera, to gathering data from wearable devices, so we kind of understand your daily activities, your sleep activities throughout the day. We use that data in combination with a care plan. Our care plans may have medical elements in them, but our care plans are really meant to be all day, every day, and help that person or those people that are helping them with behavior modification. Let's set up habits for aging well. Let's set up patterns for behavior that will help with medicine compliance, nutrition, hydration, socialization, and others throughout the day. Our platform is also used by people who are delivering traditional telecare or telewellness services, but without the burden of having to have yet another application or somebody having to know how to open Zoom or access their email to participate. We're not the only smart people on the block. Where we are in that top 10, we'll find out. But we do let other applications run on our platform. Our platform is a hardened, HIPAA compliant, always on, always there tablet device that runs our application and other partner applications, Nimble and others here locally. Can't do it all alone. So we also help create what we call a care circle. These are people that the aging adult has invited into their environment to help them help themselves. Those can be family members. They can be members of the community. We have lots of community organizations that are participating in a very active way. Where medical care is being delivered, the platform can serve also in a traditional medical telecare, remote patient monitoring standpoint. And of course, there's the so-called non-medical care, the primary in-home care services. We collect lots of data because we're observing the behavior, not in a privacy violating way, but we're observing the behavior of that individual, how well they slept that night, have they been active during the day, can we help them be active, medication compliance and adherence. What have they been up to? Have they been using us to access their favorite news channels and the music? You don't have to know how to use Spotify and log into Apple News. We do all of that for you. And then, of course, the data that we're getting continuously from wearable devices. So essentially, mom and dad are checking in literally hundreds of times a day without saying, hey, mom, are you there? Hey, mom, are you there? We know that they're there. We know what they're doing. We know that they're healthy and active. A lot of data. So we distill all of that data down and we come up with a composite metric that you can watch throughout the day or be advised throughout the day. That's basically, hey, I'm doing really okay. And it's not just, I'm not on the floor. Of course, we want to keep people off the floor, but it's, I'm thriving. You're helping me to thrive. You're helping me to live a bigger day. The last thing we're doing is we're expanding caregiver capacity. Right now, we only deliver care by putting people physically on mom's couch. We want to be there when they're not there, to span the gaps when you can't be there, to provide the 7 by 24-hour care coverage. thank you for the time and welcome to the session.
Thank you, Pat. Nice job. Much appreciated. So next up, I would like to introduce each of our speakers today, beginning with Dr. Richard Caro. Richard is the CEO and co-founder of Tech Enhanced Life, which is a public benefit corporation with a mission of improving quality of life for older adults and their families. He's also an angel investor with a particular focus on the intersection of healthcare, aging, and technology. Richard started his career as a researcher at Stanford University and then spent a number of years developing novel medical products, including medical lasers for minimally invasive surgery and ophthalmology, for example, LASIK. He has a Doctor of Philosophy in Physics from Oxford University, where he was a Rhodes Scholar and has 24 patents. So that's very impressive. Most of us don't even have one. So thank you, Richard. Next is Steve Ewell. Steve is the Executive Director of the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. That foundation is the Charitable Foundation affiliated with the Consumer Technology Association. Mission is to link seniors and people with disabilities with technologies that enhance their lives. It was launched as the CEA Foundation in 2012 before changing its name in 2015. Serving as the first executive director and staff focused on the foundation, Steve is focused on continuing to build the CTA Foundation and help millions of people on behalf of the consumer technology industry. So welcome, Steve. And next up is Alex. Alex Glazebrook is Director of Operations at Aarp's Older Adults Technology Services, formerly known as Senior Planet. Alex is responsible for ensuring an outstanding experience for the older adults who participate in the many training and support programs that Oats offers. Alex hires, assigns, and manages the team of Oats trainers who collectively deliver thousands of hours of live instruction to groups of older adults each year at dozens of program sites. In addition, Alex leads the organization's efforts to identify and assess existing and emerging technology in order to determine its suitability for inclusion in Oats programming, and is charged with developing new technology-based channels through which Oats can deliver its services. Alex earned a BA, MSW, and PhD from Stony Brook University in New York and specializes in healthcare with a focus on aging, investigating the many ways in which technology influences health outcomes for older adults. Prior to joining Oats, Alex had a brief stint in the financial services industry before finding his true calling, aiding the underserved. When not at Oats, you can find Alex competing in marathons, caring for his temperamental English bulldog, I'm not sure there's any other kind, or contending with the rigors of academia. So thanks so much to our panel for joining us today. And first up, I'm just going to ask each of you folks, starting with Richard, to tell us more about what you do and why you do it, and maybe talk a little bit about the impact of AgeTech now and in the future from your perspective. So Richard, please.
So Tech Enhanced Life is a social venture, and probably the most the bit I'd like to emphasize is we started and we enable a kind of a club, I guess I think of it, of people called longevity explorers, who are older adults that are interested in the intersection of aging and technology and want to get together regularly to discuss new ideas and new products. And we do hands-on evaluation of some products and things like that. And kind of related to that, we write up what we learn and publish it on our website, which is techenhancedlife.com. And so on there, there's really quite a lot of material on hands-on evaluation of different products. One sort of area that we've found is particularly valued by the older adults that read our stuff is where we take a whole category of products and do a hands-on comparative evaluation of them. And our goal is not to say this is the best product, because we found it's hard to say that. It's rare that there's one product that's the best. But we do often find that there's a handful of products which are good for special types of people and a different handful for other types of people. So the kind of recurring theme with what we do is that once you know what sort of person you are, there often is one or two products in a particular category that we recommend. So anyway, there's a lot of that on Tech Enhanced Life. You're welcome to read it. I'm sure other things we do will come up during the conversation. We sometimes get involved helping little companies and big companies develop actual products that are useful. But I think I'll pause there and wait to the conversation to tell you more things.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So Steve, can you speak more to those same questions, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me here today, Bob. Very pleased to join this great panel. And as you shared before, the Cta Foundation, we're the charitable foundation that's affiliated with the trade association, the Consumer Technology Association. They represent about 1,500 technology companies, everything from the big global brands that everyone will recognize to about 80% of their members are actually either small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. And it's everything from the startups to the installers and everything in between. And they're probably best known for running CES, which is a trade show that we hold every year out in Las Vegas in January. We like to say it's the global stage for innovation. It's an opportunity for people across the technology industry to get together and talk about different issues. But we launched the foundation about 10 years ago as a way to give back on behalf of the industry. And specifically, when we were looking at where to focus, we decided to focus in our efforts on two populations, older adults and people with disabilities, because they were both growing demographics, but areas that we didn't see get as much attention as we thought they deserved. So, and we see a real opportunity for technology to play a significant role in serving these populations. So over the last 10 years, we've really done a number of programs, really focused in around three kind of core pillars, one of which is convening. It's bringing together members of industry, nonprofits and advocacy groups, government, academia, other key stakeholders that play a role within the work that we're looking at doing, and having opportunities to build those relationships and have the conversations that can help move things forward. We also focus on promoting innovation and looking at how can we, through awards programs, pitch competitions, research, other efforts, be both an opportunity to really recognize what is going well, the types of technologies that can really benefit people, but also be a little bit of that carrot to help draw in some of the new innovators and others to look at how they can make a difference in this space. And then the last pillar is our funding. We do support nonprofit organizations all over the country that are using our industry's technology to make a difference. And we've been thrilled to be supporters of the work that Alex is doing with Oats and Senior Planet over the years, as well as a number of other groups in Colorado and around the country. So, the last thing I just want to say is it's, I think, appropriate that today, in addition to doing this session, it's also Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So it's really an opportunity to look at the importance of accessibility as we see the types of usable and accessible technologies that can benefit older adults as well as people of all ages. So thrilled to be here and looking forward to this conversation. Thanks, Bob.
All right, thank you, Steve. Alex, please.
Thanks, Bob. Good to be here with everyone. I am the Director of Operations at Oats and Senior Planet, and the mission of Oats Older Adults Technology Services is to harness the power of technology to change the way we age. Senior Planet is basically the brand that consumers see and how all of our programs are distributed out into the public. And really, our organization sits sort of at the intersection of aging and technology. And our whole mandate is to help people take technology, apply it to their lives in ways that are meaningful and that create change. So, we do kind of operate in the digital literacy sphere often, but we're really bigger than that. So the technology that is emerging, both new and readily available, we try and find ways to have older adults engage with through programs that can, meaningfully change their lives in different domains, things like health, social connectedness, financial security, et cetera. The organization operates nationally through partners, and we also currently have 4 flagship, what we call Senior Planet centers in strategic markets around the country, which are really large sort of exploration spaces for people to stop by, take programs, and become part of a community that's interested in applying technology to life. And we actually have one of our flagship locations is in Colorado, actually in the Lowry neighborhood. So the organization about 18 months ago became a charitable affiliate of AARP, which means our work and programs stay the same, but now we have the shared support and backing of the biggest aging nonprofit in the world to help really scale our work and get our programs out and available to everyone nationally. So really excited to be here and for the conversation. Thanks, Bob.
All right, thank you, Alan. So a question I'd like to just throw out to our panel, and any or all of you can answer this if you'd like, but and that gets back to, I guess, the slide I showed earlier about all the different possible, applications of technology. So the marketplace can be really overwhelming to potential users of these products and services. So, how do you sort these out to help people? I mean, Alex, you mentioned something earlier that one of the things that Oats is working to do, and I know Richard is doing that as well. So can you speak about that? It's overwhelming to me, and I've used computers my entire life. So I can only imagine what it's like for people that haven't done that.
Sure. I mean, I can go first and say, what we try to begin with is creating sort of the foundational confidence and grounding that helps people engage in sort of the tech stratosphere, if you will. So a lot of, I think, what becomes an issue as people age with or without technology is as new developments come through, if you don't have that foundation kind of undergirding new experience, it's very difficult to understand what may and may not be relevant for you in your life. And there's so many products and services coming out every year that we try and balance that by giving people the confidence to make the decision themselves through what I mentioned before, a foundation in digital literacy. So we'll do pilot testing, and I know Richard really does a lot more of that, but we will bring new products and softwares in to test and let people kind of experience them at our centers. But what we're really doing behind the scenes is giving people kind of the foundational grounding they need to make the decisions themselves and orient everyone.
Can I chime in?
Yes, please, Richard.
I just had a few thoughts I wanted to add to all that, all of which I agree with, of course. That the number of logos that appear on those slides does look large. I agree with you, but we apply a filter to a lot of our work, which is that if you can't actually buy the product, we're interested in it, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about it, because I guess we've been doing this for 7 or 8 years now, and there's always a crop of promising looking new entrants that come and go and never quite get their product to market for various reasons. So actually, when you filter out all the ones that don't exist, it's a much smaller number than you might think. So that's the first thought. Then the second thought is that this is true of the way a lot of technology products work. Often the messaging and the marketing is about, the features, the bells and whistles and the tech and all that stuff. And what often gets lost is why you would want it, what the use case is, what the actual problem is that you're solving. So the way we look at the space is a specific problem bubbles up in the discussions of our explorers. They repeatedly say, I've got problem X. And problem X can range from, the sort of infirmity type problems like I have trouble getting around to much more subtle issues, like I want to feel more autonomy in my life, and I don't want to have to wait for the nice, paratransit social worker to come by, pick me up. There's a whole range of different problems, but if you start to talk about specific problems that can get solved by products that have technology buried in them, it starts to become a bit more manageable, because you can focus on the problems you personally care about, first of all, and forget about all the other ones. And second of all, what we found is within any one of those problem spaces, there's actually a very small number of products that are good. And in fact, in most of those problem spaces, our frustration is there really aren't any good products. So I more think of there being this huge number of problems that need solving, rather than that there's all these products and I don't know which to use.
I like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And you mentioned explorers. Can you talk a little bit more about how you find your explorers and what they actually are doing? How much time?
Yeah, so we don't find them; they find us.
Okay.
It's kind of a club. People self-identify. If anyone's listening is interested, you can read about it on our website and sign up. It's the primary purpose of the Longevity Explorer community is to do shared learning, peer-to-peer stuff, and discuss problems and things. That's how we started it. It's very interactive. It doesn't really have kind of experts telling them stuff. It's more about learning from each other. So that's a slightly different dimension than some of the other really good initiatives in the space. After we'd been doing it for a while, so people would do things like they would say, well, I just bought this particular product and I want to tell you all about it, and it's really terrible. Whatever you do, don't buy it. Or they might say, actually, it was really good. Let me tell you about it. And then we started to do things a bit more systematically, where we would encourage everybody to bring whatever they used for problem X to the next meeting and discuss it. And then we said, okay, let's go out and actually buy all the different products that might be good for that, and actually try them out with a sort of, little quasi-scientific testing protocol that we came up with. We discovered that no one was really doing that. So we did a bit more, and we discovered that the explorers really liked it. And then we really tried to emphasize writing about it. And then the next thing that happened after we'd been doing that for a couple of years, the explorers started saying things to me like, Richard, we try out all these products and they're mostly really bad. And isn't there some way we can get involved with the companies before they spend millions of dollars making things we don't want, so they would actually develop something we'd like? So anyway, we started doing that a little bit too, and we do projects sometimes with companies. Not as many as I'd like, but we do. And that works really well, because the companies usually don't have a very good understanding of what older adults actually care about, first of all, and second, how they would interact with the product. So we've done a number of projects where, the 30-year-old product developers are interacting with a group of 70 or 80-year-old explorers, and it's usually quite eye-opening for both sides. And so those are a lot of fun. I can talk more about that as we go along if you want.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's good to hear that at least some products are being developed with the older adult user in mind. Steve, would you like to comment about that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, a number of things related to what Richard was just sharing, because I love the way he is addressing this through the value proposition of why is the technology needed, and the use case, because that really does make a big difference in continued use for the technology from all the work that we're seeing. As far as the opportunities with technology and the opportunities for design with technology, that is something that we're seeing more and more interest from companies across the technology industry. And certainly the AgeTech companies that you highlighted in your in Karen's map earlier in the presentation, but also with the general consumer technologies,
Yes.
the Samsungs and Apples and IBMs and kind of across the entire technology spectrum. 10 years ago, there was not the same focus on the aging demographic that we are seeing now. And now there are more and more people taking an interest in addressing this and starting to understand the need to bring in older adults who can help with that design, as well as the piloting of different types of technologies. That's something we've done, work with some senior living communities like Front Porch, where they've tested out a number of different technologies with us. Some have worked well, some have not. But actually, sometimes that some have not is actually an important lesson as well, because then that can go back to the designers and help understand why that hearable device just doesn't work well for the aging demographic. So I think we're seeing more and more work go into this space. The other thing we're seeing is just the number of startups that are being created. This past year, even with a smaller mid-pandemic CES, we had 800 startups there from all over the world. And there are a number of them that are looking at the aging population and how they can serve this population. So that's one of the both opportunities, but also one of the challenges is, a lot of the founders, I saw, a family member that was struggling with something. So I designed a product that can help them, which is great, but helping them reach a broader audience to be able to test with, not just an N of one, but really understanding, how does this product work and solve the needs of a much broader population, because the aging demographic is incredibly diverse. And, it also goes back to, how do you define the aging demographic? If you go, with, AARP's 50 plus, 50 to 100 plus is a very, very different, and there's a lot of different breakdowns within there. And then people at the same age are very different. So I think that's one of the challenges as well, is there's not just being able to say, okay, this product works well for someone who is, 65 years old and hits this criteria. It's really individualized and based on, what that person needs.
Yeah, I think that really does reflect on what Richard said about, finding a need and then identifying what helps people in that particular segment of the demographic. It is highly segmented. So, Alex, would you have anything you'd like to add to this conversation about here?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think sort of goes back to what my introductory statement was, is you have to kind of link the relevance in people's lives to the use. So people aren't going to use something that just because they're told to, right? And a lot of what we do through our programs is try and connect the technology's purpose in their life. And if it doesn't have a purpose, we may recommend that they pass. So that's kind of what our organization concentrates around, is only picking and including tech that's, number one, that's mainstream, but also provides benefit in life. And a lot of the tech out there, frankly, doesn't. So we try and help people avoid those things when they don't need them.
Hey, Bob, can I just build on something that Steve touched on?
Of course.
So, because I think this is a really, really interesting point and not well appreciated. Steve mentioned the fact that the large consumer electronics companies are starting to dip their toe in this space. And I agree. First of all, I agree with that, of course, but there have been several developments in the last 2 years where huge companies, Apple's an obvious example, have started to add features that are particularly relevant to older adults to otherwise mainstream products. And the whole idea of AgeTech, I think, is in question in my mind. AgeTech is a category somehow designed to only be good for older adults, I guess. That's the general idea. And historically, AgeTech products have been things you would get if you really had to, but you didn't really want them. You know, you'd like to do without the walker as long as possible, please. You'd like to do without the hearing aids as long as possible, please. So it was more of a, I got to have it because there's something going wrong with me somehow. And yeah, I guess I'll have it. And as a consequence of that, they were what's called beige, boring. I think there's a third word with B, I'm forgetting, but basically they were ugly. They were the opposite of what I call aspirational products. So you flip that around, you look at the consumer electronics industry. I use Apple as my talking point. I have no relationship with Apple, but I think it's a good example. Things like an Apple Watch, it's something you want. And now it's got some features in it that used to be in a kind of AgeTech product called a medical alert that was made you look like you escaped from the ICU. Now you can have this product that you actually wanted for a whole range of reasons, and it just happens to have in it these you know, older adult type features, use cases. I think that's changing. That's going to change the way the whole world thinks about technology and aging, actually. And I think increasingly that developing products which aren't aspirational, which are things you've got to have but don't want, I'm not sure that's a winning strategy anymore. So I think that's a very, very important trend going forward.
And I can back what Richard was just saying up. Our research into consumer buying patterns and things along those lines, there's absolutely a market for people who will buy you know, the product that is designed specifically for the aging marketplace, but we see far more who want the same watch that they see their kids or grandkids having, the same tablet that they see, you know, other friends and family members using. So building in that usability into the general consumer technology can help, you know, provide some of the needs that the aging market may have, but also do it in a way that's not stigmatizing. It's not saying you're an other because you have to use this version. It also brings some of the economies of scale with it that help bring down some of the costs, which I know is always a big challenge with, you know, when you're creating a product for a smaller segment of the market. And believe me, the aging market is not a small segment, but anytime you can reach the entire market versus one segment, it helps bring those costs down.
Yes, and you know, Richard mentioned Apple. I have heard of you know, Amazon is doing some work related, and so is Google. Can any of you talk about what they're doing? I think more specifically, it's in like congregate living facilities, maybe for so much for Amazon, but there may be some other things too that I don't know about. Do you folks know?
You know, I won't say that I'm privy to any state secrets from some of these companies, but we are seeing, in particular, some of the voice technology spaces. We've seen both with Amazon and Google, them rolling out their voice assistants within some senior living communities with the opportunity to both give the individuals living there more control over their environment. You know, as we have more and more people using the voice assistants, the natural language processing is getting better and better, and the AI behind it's able to get better and better, and that will help, you know, understand more people, help to customize their environments around them. So they are looking at that. They're also building into it some integration with those communities, so the community has the opportunity, rather than have to have someone, you know, call down to the front desk to find out, you know, what activities are going on today. They can build that into asking the voice assistant. So there's a number of efforts going on with those companies, and you know, they're looking to expand out into other areas besides the voice assistants, and I think we'll see more coming in that space.
We're starting to see a lot of interesting smart home kind of ideas actually getting implemented too. Not necessarily, I mean, it's very fragmented, the industry, unfortunately, but there's specific use cases that people are starting to take advantage of, really simple ones like asking your voice assistant to open the blinds for you if you can't get them yourself, stuff like that. But much more complicated ones too, which I think are really indicative of the future.
Are any of you seeing anything with, I mean, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, but chat bots, so many websites have chat bots, and most of them that I've used at least are really not very good. They'll give you some account information if that's what you're looking for, but beyond that, not so much. But the key thing there though is so many people are using phones now too, and so having a voice activated chat bot that you can just speak your question and get an answer back in speech. Do you know of anyone who's actually working on that problem right now? I've been told it's very complicated because of dialects and so on, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I do think that there's a number of companies working on that space. I mean, even just think about, when you call a customer service line, whether it was credit card or travel company or something along those lines, and it's gone from, the press 1, press 2, all that to being able to speak your answers and not always getting it perfectly. Believe me, I've been frustrated with those technologies as much as anyone, but it is rapidly improving. And I think you're going to see more of those types of technologies continue to improve. You mentioned dialects. That's something, there's companies like VoiceIt, which is designing a technology that can work with other voice assistants that can help understand people with either, very, very heavy accents or people who have speech disabilities. So someone who has Parkinson's or cerebral palsy or other conditions that might impact their ability to speak, they're designing this technology that can help to be that translator and help them interface with these sorts of devices. So we are seeing more work going into that space. And then, you mentioned chatbots. One of the groups that we've worked with is an organization called Code of Support. And they are a organization that basically takes all the various services that members of the military, veterans, and their caregivers and other family members, and helps match them to what services they're eligible to do. And they have a website called Patriot Link where people can search. But they did, one of the things we helped add on to that is a chat bot, because they found that some of the participants were much more comfortable using that to interface and start explaining, what are the sorts of things they're looking for, and have it kind of translate that versus needing to go through a whole form and check, I want this and that, and, I meet this criteria. Having it help cue them with, oh, here's the sorts of things that we need, has actually been very beneficial to the work that they're doing. The other piece that they can do because of the chatbot, especially when you're working with the military community, is if there's anything that they're saying that starts to hint towards, suicide and self-harm, it's able to immediately direct them to someone who can get them assistance. So, and they're finding that chatbot can be very useful for that those purposes.
Oh, that's great. That's very cool. Alex, I'd like to ask you, in the work that you're doing, the things that people are asking you the most about with, for their help, with technology, can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, since the pandemic began, a lot of it really was connecting to, virtual platforms that allow you to connect with others. So Zoom, Teams, etc. Finding ways to, access programming online or access different services online. So it was a lot of sort of, how do I acquire this skill for registering for a Zoom program? So I now have, a whole slew and menu of offerings from all of the, organizations I used to know in person, now I can do it all virtually from the comfort of my home. So, you know, I think since the pandemic began, a lot of it is really people wanting to stay connected through different, you know, mainstream softwares really. So we've been doing a lot of Zoom support. We've been doing a lot of benefits access. So people who maybe used to, you know, go in person to the DMV even, or Social Security, we've been doing a lot to help people maintain connection to those services. And then just sort of leisure and social programming. You know, a lot of churches and other community centers took all their programming online, and people couldn't figure out how to access them because they weren't accustomed to, you know, a registration process online. So we've been spending a lot of time just on a lot of basic skills really to keep people connected. And we actually have a contact center that intentionally doesn't use a chat bot because of the difficulty that people encounter using it. And our contact center is completely live call reps. So if you have an issue, you can just call in and get one-on-one support on any type of issue you may be encountering. So we'll walk people through, you name it, downloading Zoom, you know, figuring out how to access a certain benefit online. It really runs the whole gamut. And that's been a successful way of kind of bridging people's disconnection during the pandemic.
And is that, how many hours a day is that call center manned?
It just extended. So it's still only open Monday through Friday, but it's now open 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we do have English and Spanish reps on the lines.
Could you put that number in the chat, please?
Yeah, sure.
And speaking of chat, we'd welcome you, anyone who's on this call today, to enter your contact information if you wish. So I forgot to say that earlier, so there it is. Richard, do you have anything that you'd like to add to anything Steve or Alex said?
I think that nothing very profound, but I'd like to just maybe amplify what Alex was saying about the virtual connections and everything, because like everyone else, you know, our explorers used to meet face to face before COVID, and we turned it into virtual things in the last couple of years. I wasn't at all sure how well it would work because before COVID, we would often talk about things like video calls to connect to your adult child on the other side of the country, stuff like that. And while some of our explorers loved that sort of technology and used it, before COVID, a large fraction of our explorers had the opinion that they had no interest in any of that. And it was, you know, they had a whole range of different reasons, but they weren't interested in FaceTiming or any of that sort of stuff. And so when we put our circles, when we transformed them to virtual ones, I had a horrible feeling it wouldn't work well at all. But in fact, it worked pretty well. And what I learned, you know, the explorers needed some hand holding and stuff. But almost a large fraction of them learned how to use Zoom very well and actually liked it. And what I took away from that was the importance of motivation. So this is the point I want to make. And I think this is true of many technologies. You read in the newspaper how older adults can't use technology and all that stuff all the time. And I've decided that's the wrong framing, really. I think the right framing is that unless somebody explains to a person why they care about something deeply, then they might not want to learn it. But the minute you realize that it's a pandemic, I've got to learn how to use Zoom or I can't talk to anybody, suddenly they're motivated and they can do it. I think that's a good lesson for many sorts of technology adoption. If one focuses on why they want it, rather than the bells and whistles or the features, I think that makes a big difference.
Well, I can see that it would. So a little bit more on your explorers. So given that you just said, you know, it's been successful having the explorers work virtually together. So I take it then that you would accept explorers from anywhere in the country?
We do. First of all, we had circles all around the country before anyway, not a huge number, but, you know, they were dotted around the country, face-to-face ones. So we've always welcomed explorers from anywhere in the world, actually, although most of them are in North America. But during COVID, we put the conventional ones virtual, and then we decided that worked pretty well. So then we started a couple of news cycles that were just virtual and enrolled people from all around the country. And we're continuing to do that, although there's some things we decided we needed to do a bit different than our face-to-face ones. So the whole idea of being Explorer now is open to kind of anyone who's interested.
And so do the explorers then, do they buy whatever the technology is themselves, or do you help with that? I mean, how does that work? It
varies, depends what we're trying to do. There's usually stages of our work. So it usually starts with, it's a very driven by the crowd, not by quote me or anyone else. So the explorers come along and start talking about jar openers as a good example. And the next thing you know, they all bring their jar opener. So they don't go out and buy one, they already had one, but they bring it along and there's a lot of talking. And so then we decided, okay, maybe we'll make it a bit more systematic. So then I went out and bought them all on Amazon and brought them along to this different circles. So there's a bit of a balance. Sometimes with a much more complicated product like the robotic medication management tools that I think are pretty interesting. They're quite expensive. So then we would go out and either buy them or ask to borrow them from the companies to do our evaluations.
So but you do buy, you don't ask companies to provide the products to be tested, you actually buy the products.
Well, when we first started, we bought everything because I wanted to make sure that we were independent and objective and weren't only testing products that somebody wanted to loan us because they wanted to get a quote review. So that's how we started. Once we got a little bit more critical mass and people recognized that our reviews were, independent and objective, we do sometimes say to a company, we're testing products in this space. How would you like to loan yours to us? And if they do, that's great. If they don't, we go out and buy it. But we discovered that there's no real disadvantage to asking to borrow them so long as we don't use that as the filter of whether we test things or not.
Okay, all right, thanks. So Alex, you do some of this with Oats too. You do some of this testing. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, it's probably not as rigorous as what Richard does, but we do a lot of participant and member surveying, and we look for themes that way about what people are interested in. And we, routinely will look for topics or technology or trends that are just sort of in people's minds. And then we try and pick out the most mainstream example of that and test it at our centers. So we're about to do a test right now with, it's actually not really a new product, but the Amazon Echo Show, which is the Echo with a screen. And we're going to be testing that in our centers to see how people interact with it, whether they respond well to it, and whether it could be a good sort of easy way to connect with friends, loved ones, or other people. So we kind of do it inductively, where we bring in people's desires or interests and then design around that and try and find the most mainstream product out there and test it. And if it works and people really take to it, then we'll build programming around it. But first we really sort of pilot and try and design a experience around it that people can get excited about. And we don't, to be just totally transparent, we don't do a tremendous amount of that work. We kind of do it haphazardly and when it feels right. But we've seen a lot of trend, like there's a lot of interest in smart home right now. There's a lot of interest in just different ways to stay connected through video calling. Had some interesting questions about transportation, autonomous vehicles, but also people who are just noticing all the different ways people are getting around cities now. If you've been in a major city recently, probably noticing all of the electrified transportation options that exist. So we listen to our people and build it from there, basically.
Okay, thank you. So Steve, do you know of other organizations that do similar work to what Richard's been describing?
I don't know that there's anyone who's doing quite what Richard's doing. I think there's some that are doing different types of, like I said, there's some senior living communities that are doing pilots of different technologies and helping the companies there. We see a number of nonprofit organizations that are working with specific communities. For instance, the Lighthouse in San Francisco does a lot of work with startups, helping them design products for people who are low vision or blind. But that's for that specific portion, and it might be a number of older adults as part of that, but there's also, there's some organizations out there that have been developing things to look at different services. So, for instance, in Virginia, where I am, there's something called Senior Navigator, which is helping seniors in Virginia be able to identify the types of services that are available to them. And they have a technology portion of that, but it's relatively small compared to the number of products that are out there. So I think there's a lot of different efforts going on. I know the Administration for Community Living had their Mental Health Innovation Challenge a number of, I guess, feels like a number of years ago, early in the pandemic, where they were looking for solutions to help people identify the types of both services and technologies that are out there. So there's some efforts out there, but there's not, kind of beyond what Richard's doing, here is the exact place to go to get your, consumer reports, besides going to a Consumer Reports to get where they do some reviews of broader technologies.
So I have, two other follow-ups, but one is on Consumer Reports, and I'll ask Richard about that. But before that, the National Council on Aging recently announced something they're doing around technologies to test certain products. I don't know that much about it. It's fairly recent. Do any of you know anything about that? No? Okay. All right. Well, it's the federal government at work, so we'll see how that works out, but who knows? So Richard, on the Consumer Reports issue, so what do you know about how Consumer Reports actually tests their products?
Since you're videoing this, I'm not sure that I want to focus on a specific organization, but I'll tell you this. So I didn't know anything about this space of reviewing products and things and what you read online before we did this, but now I know a lot about it. And I think a really interesting question to ask when you discover something on the internet that claims to be talking about which products you should buy, the question to ask is, did they actually ever touch the product? And I think you'll find that mostly they did not. And so if you think that you can review a product without ever seeing it or touching it, I guess that's okay. But we personally think that's pretty hard. I think something like Consumer Reports, they have, their whole reputation is on wonderful internal labs and things like that. But at least with some of the products for older adults, they've moved away from that a little bit. And let's just say it's good to ask if they ever touched the product.
Fair enough. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot there, Richard.
It's okay.
I'd like to open this up to our audience to see if anyone in the audience would have any questions of our panelists. So please. Anyone? You've heard a lot of information that you might have some follow-up questions. This is a great opportunity. You got 3 experts here. Or you can put it in the chat, whichever you prefer. Okay. So back to our panelists. I would ask each of you, do you have anything that you'd like to add that we haven't already discussed? Start there. No?
I think we've hit a number of important topics here today. I think it's just understanding that the demographic changes that we're seeing, the growing population, it's a real opportunity for the technology companies that are out there looking to serve these demographics, but there's also a number of steps that can be done to help them better serve these demographics, and working with some of the groups that you see on here, I think are a great way to help people bring products to market that can really benefit the older population.
Okay, thank you. Any other closing comments? Richard, Alex?
The only thing I'd say that I maybe didn't say much of yet is since we focus on the use cases and the problems, we just continue to see many, 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 many unmet needs in this area. And I actually think there's a shortage of entrepreneurs working on the important problems. So I keep hoping there'll be more every year. Actually, the number that Steve threw out about how many startups were at CES, that was pretty exciting. I just hope they're all working on good problems.
So how can you're identifying these unmet needs, Richard, through your explorers. So how does that information get moved to people who are in the technology development space? How does that work?
Well, we write up what we discover. It's not necessarily very accessible for developers, but it's all published. We don't spend a lot of energy writing, dear startup company, here's what you should develop type articles, just because they're not really our target audience. But sometimes startup companies ask our help to explore specific problems, but also, something like Oats would be an obvious place to discover about problems. I don't think there's a shortage of ways to find out about it. But as you mentioned, the usual path is someone says, my grandmother had this problem, therefore I'm going to make a widget to fix that problem. Right. And maybe we just need to move past that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here to maybe an opportunity to formalize that process and make it a little more active. Alex,
we'd be keen to help with any of that, so perhaps that's a follow-up conversation.
No, that would be super. And I know there are a number of organizations even here in Colorado that are focused on building technology applications for a variety of needs, and particularly in the healthcare space. So that might be something we should have another conversation about, Richard. Alex, anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, I think that there's, one of the things that we try and do organizationally is try and just debunk the sort of the stereotypes that really kind of perpetuate or pervade how technology's relevance declines in people's lives as they age. So like organizationally, we're trying to combat against that by demonstrating how technology provides real outcomes to people and real impact, and showing it very plainly in people, in their words, not ours. But I think, societally, we're still battling against really like a culture that believes that, in a lot of ways, but specifically with technology and age, that they're incongruous, and we really see them as very well connected. So I think there needs to be more groups out there who are spending time on like the softer side of it and weaving in a narrative that demonstrates opportunity and possibility with age and technology, rather than kind of solutions designed to fix aging. And I think that's where a lot of kind of the discourse goes, and I think it kind of does a disservice to getting people to actually use technology over time.
I agree with that.
That's a great observation, and I think you're absolutely right. That does happen an awful lot.
Yeah, so that's why we talk about ourselves being a social impact organization and not a technology training organization, because we believe our work ultimately is really achieving that end that I was just talking about and not just tech skills.
And you have those lifestyle model people, right? Those 80-year-old athletes and things like that.
We do have some of that. That's a little aspirational for my
I think it's
taste, but
great.
yep, we do have that. What they're called our sponsored athletes, the team Senior Planet sponsored athletes. So they're people that are debunking kind of age norms with their, fitness prowess, if you will. So we had we have an 80-year-old bodybuilder doing stuff with us right now and incorporating technology into their life, stuff like that. And it just, I think that can also kind of go too far as well, but it just shows, it gives like a glimpse into, you don't have to be a, 80-year-old power lifter, but, how can technology support you as you age based on what your goals are? And that's really what we're trying to accomplish through that type of messaging.
Okay. Sasha, did you have a question? No? Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, well, thanks very much, folks. This has been extremely informative. I very much appreciate your time and your thoughtful comments. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody in the audience has as well. Again, very much appreciated, and have a great afternoon and the rest of your weekend. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. That was
Thank
fun.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.